Hi, this is Bob Samuels, founder of TechConnectr. TechConnectr is a marketplace and campaign management platform of best-of-breed account-based marketing lead generation solutions. We've partnered with the Serious Decisions Summit to bring you wisdom from leading account-based marketing thought leaders. To that end, I'm happy to introduce you to Nick Robinson, Head of Digital Marketing for SAP North America. Nick has a great background and perspective as an entrepreneur and a marketing analyst and practitioner. Nick, it's a pleasure to speak with you. How are you today?
Hey, Bob, thanks for having me on the program. I can't wait to get into B2B marketing. I have an obsessive passion about it, as my wife likes to tell me. So can't wait to get into the discussion today.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to, for our audience to learn a little bit about you. Your background is particularly interesting. You've actually owned some companies in the past, and you've got an analytics background. And love to hear more about what's behind all of this and what you do these days around ABM.
Yeah. I mean, when I tell my career story, I date back to like 97. So I'm 35. So I was literally like 14 years old, and I was building like GeoCities websites, and I had my own business. So I've always been like sort of entrepreneurial. And the reason why I mention that and why it's relevant is because the moment I discovered sort of the web, I was hooked, and it was always something that I gravitated toward. And so it was kind of this intersection between technology and business that I really fell in love with. And then right after college, I lived in Spain for a year, and I actually work in the travel industry. And that's when I really started to get into marketing. And right after the crash of the economy in 2008, 09, that's when I got into the agency world. And that's where I actually fell in love with B2B. And I think one of the reasons why I fell in love with B2B is because if you think about it, marketing should be easier in B2B because the amount of people, or the amount of accounts that you market to is very defined. So to me, I believed it was much easier. Although at the time when I got into it, B2B didn't have as many tools and best practices as we do now. I think, Serious Decisions was really just getting off the ground at that point. So fast forward, B2B is it's an exciting time to be in B2B, and it's that we have more data and tools, and we know what to do with now. And I think we're over the next couple of years, we're going to see consolidation in technology, and then just more sophistication around going after the best fit folks, which ultimately equals more growth and more efficiency. And that's like where the real value creation happens, and that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, I share your passion. My wife says bad things about me too, but they're a little different. But my background is analytics like yours, and I spent my first half of my career in the newspaper business, and to be able to do the tracking and the targeting and the figuring out what's working and what's not with the digital world, it's a beautiful thing.
It is. Yeah, there's nothing better than being in a conversation with somebody and using facts and data. And I've become so reliant on it over time that sometimes I don't feel comfortable. And that's actually one of my weaknesses that I freely admit, is that I have a hard time telling a story if I don't have facts to back it up. So if you ask me if I was really good at selling a new concept, I'd say I'm probably not as good at it because I don't have as many facts as you probably would have if you were selling a solution that's more proven. So, yeah.
Makes sense. So ABM, you've been around since before they really made that term. I mean, it's nothing new. It's just named accounts. It's target accounts.
Right.
What's your familiarity with it and
the
different factors of success?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny it's called account-based marketing. I think back in, forever, probably in the night, like, I was too young to really remember this, but I mean, it was strategic account marketing. And that word is still around for like the top tier accounts, but ultimately it's, at the end of the day, it's getting really smart about marketing and selling and developing products for your best fit customers. And in the past, it's been about, okay, well, who are your top 20% customers that generate 80%? And that in our business, that could have been like the Pepsis of the world and the Coca-Colas and the Walmarts, like these just, gangbuster big companies. But what we're seeing is, especially for us, because we started up market, we're looking at, okay, well, we're very entrenched up market. So how do we get more efficient at providing value and growing those accounts that we already have? But then also, how do we move to the mid market and further down by providing the right products for those markets, but also better determining where to put our marketing and sales dollars. And so that's sort of the big picture. And the only way you can really do that to drive growth, both in the install base, but then also in new markets, is by getting very, very clear on, obviously, product market fit, but also using all the data that we now have at our disposal to make the very best choices for the capital that we've been allocated in marketing and sales and product, really. But as a marketer, that's what I'm interested in, because if you do that really well and you say the right things to those people in those accounts, you're going to drive growth and you're going to drive operating margin, because ultimately that's what we're trying to do as a business. We're trying to, for example, SAP, we've promised to the street that we're going to drive 40% growth in cloud. But we also promised that we're going to drive 1 percentage point increase in operating margin per year until 2023. And so it's like, that's like an art to get that right. It's an art and a science, but to drive growth and the margin, it's like you have to do a lot of things really well. And as a marketer, I sort of know what I need to do now to contribute to that, no matter how small the piece is. That's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned, I'll have to listen to the tape again, that part of this is to try to have the product, change the product or modify the product to match the client's needs or interests, as opposed to the other way around, trying to talk them into liking your product.
Right. So that is, I mean, one of the things that we've been talking about as a team lately is how do you better plan, like how do you better develop a marketing plan and a program and ultimately execute a better campaign? And it all starts with, you have to let the data tell you what to do. And data comes in many different formats. There's obviously quantitative, which most people equate, but then you also have qualitative, and it's actually getting out and talking to customers. And so you have to do that work up front. And it sounds so simple to say it, but in a large enterprise like SAP, you'd be very surprised at how, as we become a bigger business, we've stayed in the building, so to speak. We stayed in the glass building, and it becomes harder to really understand what jobs the customer is trying to get done. And so you have to do the work up front to really understand what they want. And I think that goes for product, for marketing, content, for sales. And the reason why it probably isn't happening as much as it should, it's because it's hard. Yeah, and it's really hard to wrangle all that information and synthesize it without doing a lot of really hard work.
So it sounds like a lot of the work is upfront in the planning and the figuring out what you want and how you can get the information you need to be able to act on it.
Yeah, and I think the challenge really is you only have a certain amount of time to plan, so that the planning cycles are getting quicker, and the ability to react is that needing to be more reactive is getting quicker. So how do you jam all of those data points into the least amount of time possible to react quicker? That's like, if we can figure that out, then we can drive growth and we can drive operating margin because we'll be able to react quicker. So, I don't think any company has really figured that out yet. But whoever gets as close as they can to that reality is going to provide a lot of value.
Makes sense. That makes sense. So at the end of the day, how are you able to measure the success? I mean, I assume you've got a 6, 9, 12-month sales cycle.
Yeah, so so of course it becomes an exercise in looking at leading indicators and lagging indicators. Typically, for large enterprise deals, in the the upper part of our account segmentation, it could be 12 to 18 months. So you can't really optimize in a given calendar year something that will turn into revenue 12 months, 18 months from now. So what we have to look at is what are we doing to one, increase the overall engagement of the account. Now, engagement's a really broad category, so we've actually created it's really scoring. It's an engagement score, and so we want to see that go up and to the right as a result of our marketing campaigns. But we also look, if you peel that onion back, the scoring onion, we also look at, are we meeting the intent of the plan? So there's this guy from Allocadia, Sam Melnick. I don't know if you know him, but I've listened to him speak a couple of times, and he talks a lot about the intent of the plan, and he talks about return on intent. And the way that you get return on investment is by always referring back to the plan and understanding, are you meeting the intent of the plan? So, for example, I was talking before about going after your best fit customers. So if you have a list, one, are you getting engagement lift and response from people inside of accounts on that list? That's like the first question. Then if the marketing plan was designed to engage a specific buying center, well, are you getting people to engage from that buying center? And then, so like you keep on peeling the onion back on the different layers of the plan. And so we measure all of that. But at the end of the day, it's about, are we, as a result of these touches, are we influencing pipeline creation and booked one revenue? But but the majority of our day is analyzing engagement, and are we moving the needle there? Because in our complex selling motion, a lot of the work we do is to make the sales team's lives easier, and a lot of it's spent in pipeline as well. We're not just sourcing pipeline, but we're working in pipeline to make sure that it's closing because of that long sales cycle.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And it also sounds like it's not just for marketing to get new prospects, but it's actually to affect the current customers and getting them deeper into your relationship.
I mean, it's about 60, 40 really. 60% install base, and then the other 40% is new customers. And new customers is really the mid-market and down. That's where most of the growth is coming from, and that's where the new customer acquisition is coming from. And that alone is interesting because they're two totally different strategies and mix of the tactics and even the way you measure impact. So that's also an interesting place to be in a mature software company, is that you're often playing an old world and new world, and you're also playing between cross-sell, upsell, and the new acquisition.
Yeah, and so it sounds like your approach is different even from enterprise to mid-level, and also you've got buying committees and different personas you have to reach out to.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah, and even the messaging is slightly tweaked, but all the unit economics are different too, which is why we need to drive. For example, we have to drive more automation in the mid-market and lower, just because going back to that operating margin, we can't afford the higher cost of goods sold in the lower to mid-market like we can with the higher margin enterprise sales. So we have to drive automation and more digital marketing. So it's so that's something that I've learned, that SAP actually has a lot of clarity on tying marketing back to those ultimate those business metrics. So that's something that I think SAP does really well.
Yeah. So what do you you don't need to name names or measurement or specifics, but how do you deal with measuring success of your different efforts? So I assume that you've got some attribution challenges, that people get hit with more than one message, or different timing, different channels, perhaps different mediums, and that sort of thing. So how do you figure out which effort? What do you give credit? How do you give credit to a success?
Yeah. So today we do last touch, and we know from an investment perspective that using that model, we can optimize. We can optimize to a certain degree based on the fact that if for example, that last touch model, most of the credit would go toward like an event and an SDR. And we know that's ultimately everything else we do in terms of the investments that we make and the tactics that we execute are designed in many cases to make those two tactics better, given the fact that it's a last touch attribution model. And that notion we know is not perfect, but we make the investments in the other tactics to really support those, the last touch, which are often at the end of the buying cycle. So the pro is that we have clarity, and we know that investing 100% in those tactics wouldn't make any sense. But we also make the investments to get the right people on the list for those tactics. And then we also have an initiative coming up where we're not only looking at last touch, we're looking at multi-touch. So this is where we'll start to optimize the investments that we're making across those many tactics. And a lot of people talk about credit when we go to multi-touch, but it doesn't really, the credit is not the point. The point is actually to optimize dollars and to make sure that if we're able to spend incremental dollars on one tactic versus the next to get more pipeline, knowing that pipeline will come from SDRs and events, that's a much better place to be in than to argue over who gets credit over the pipeline. Like even in marketing, I think we know that, for example, I'm responsible for digital marketing. If I tried to take credit for pipeline, for example, it wouldn't make any sense because it's not the role of the tactic. So I know that everything that I do is designed to support SDRs and events, because ultimately for those tactics to be successful, I have to engage with the right people in the areas that I'm responsible for. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So, but earlier, and you don't need to name names, but you mentioned one of your content syndication, lead generation vendors or solution providers perform better than the other one. Mm-hmm. When you say that, what are you referring to when you're saying they're performing better? Because they're certainly not the last touch by definition.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing. That's what's so surprising, is that really the role of the tactic is to get the right people to the table so that we can then develop our marketing or multi-touch marketing around those people, so that half the battle in our marketing programs is to get the right people inside of the right accounts, just to show up and have coverage in our database, and so that's really the role of the tactics: is are we getting the right the right amount of the right people? That was a tongue twister. To the table. And leads and pipeline is gravy, but for some reason this provider, not only are they providing the right people from the right accounts, but they're also providing people from the right accounts with the right intent to buy. And I have my guess or my hypothesis is that they've invested a lot in marketing technology and marketing ops processes over the last couple of years, and whatever investments that they've made are paying off in terms of finding the people at the zero moment of truth, because that's ultimately what we want. We know the role of the tactic, but we also, at the end of the day, we want people that are ready. So if they can provide people that are ready to talk to us now, that's amazing. And
Right.
they figured it out, and it like literally, if you looked at reporting across all of our solutions, every single time they're the top of the pack. So it's not just a fluke. It's happening everywhere.
And they're dealing with the same assets and the same calls to action.
Same thing. Yeah, same. I mean, they've gotten the same requirements from our RFP, same assets. So it's a testament to their audience development, and whatever they've done there, it's working. And if they could sell their secret sauce to us, I would pay some top dollar.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So what are some of the the personal successes that you've seen on as far as ABM goes, or any learning opportunities you can share?
Yeah, so one's quantitative and then one's, I'd say, more qualitative. So quantitative wise, we in our lead gen investments, we decided to convert the approach to 100% account based. And we did it for all the reasons that I previously discussed, which is the business needs to drive growth. It needs to drive more operating margin, which basically means that we have to do more with less. And the only way I could think to contribute to that imperative is to focus on the very best accounts and demand from our partners that we only want delivery against that list. Because in order to enable that, we've invested in a bunch of data science and marketing technology to help us hone in on the best fit accounts. So as a result of that, over the last 24 months, we've essentially tripled our engagement with that target account universe. And we've doubled direct return on investment. And when I say return on investment, I'm talking about, like, for every dollar we spend in lead gen media, we get back $13, and that's double where we were the year before. So right away we have enormous efficiency gains when we focus on our best fit customers. Qualitatively, from our account executive teams, we have some anecdotal evidence that we're seeing some uptick in engagement. So just general feedback from the sales team, they're saying that they're definitely seeing uptick from the accounts that we're both focusing on. So that motivates me to continue on the path and really push forward. And I have a ton of conviction around this because I have the evidence that it works.
That's awful nice. When you know, and like you said, if you can measure it, that's certainly a lot better than the anecdotal. The anecdotal is nice too. Right. It's good to be able to measure it.
Yep.
What I've seen is measuring some of these content syndication top of funnel campaigns with like based on what the sales opportunities were created.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a sale yet, but at least sales accepted leads.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So that makes sense. So, so what is your, if you have a crystal ball, what does your crystal ball say as far as, we've seen a lot of changes in these last, 5-10 years on technology and around the data, around the intent signals. I think I was going to ask you about that. Are you using quote unquote predictive or various signals to identify and prioritize the accounts that are worth going after?
Yes. In fact, our program is called Crystal Ball. Internally, we've called our program Crystal Ball, and it's super interesting because we've always had propensity modeling, and we've had install-based data providers like HG and other providers like that. So two things have happened since we've now that we have this new program. One is all of those different data sources are now consolidated. They were all over the place before. So all the propensity models were like in different places, same with install base. But then now we're adding this more of the unstructured information, which is the intent from not just the usual Bomboras of the world, but even like G2 Crowd and even Trust Radius and True Influence, and so that's the most interesting part about it, is because it's not just one intent. It comes in different flavors, especially now that traditional publishers and even marketplaces are monetizing their data. They, I describe it as Bombora might be like the arm and the leg of the customer in terms of the 360-degree view, but then True Influence and G2 might be like the ear and the eye. They have different pieces of the customer sort of digital body language, and I think we're smart in that we're agnostic, because it's the only way you're going to be able to fill out the 360-degree view.
So by definition, these are additive. These are not conflicting sources, but they're very compatible.
So far,
they
that's
help
what we're seeing.
Validate each other potentially.
Yeah. So far, that's what we're seeing. Yeah. It's almost like triple check, or filling out the profile.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. So, getting back to, what do you see as the what's the world going to look like in 5 years, or even a year?
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer is going to be a lot more automation, but I think we're already there. There's a lot of automation now. I think one of the things I believe is going to transform the profession is there's going to be a lot more maturity around marketing influence and impact based on time lag. I think there's everyone will be much smarter, both marketers and salespeople alike, on understanding the time lag of marketing impact, and then also just performance in general on influence versus direct sourcing. And then I think that the tool sets and really, like, even field marketers, they're going to have more access, not only access to data, but smart data. So data, sort of dashboards that are going to make recommendations for marketers on the fly, so they can just do smarter activities versus taking 4 weeks to analyze something and then making a decision. Whereas we're going to have machines that are just going to be able to recommend next best actions. And some of that will be automated, and some of that there'll be workflows. So I think that's going to accelerate, and that's, that ultimately, that's going to contribute to it's more growth and more margin.
Do more with less, being smarter.
Yep.
And you mentioned there about sales and marketing, and you didn't mention about any conflicts, so I assume that you and the sales team are pretty in line with the goals and vision of the ABM effort.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I mean, everyone's aligned philosophically. I'd say in a big company, it becomes difficult because it's complex. Because our portfolio is huge. There are different go-to-market models depending on the geo and the line of business that we're selling into. So I'd say that as a company, philosophically, we like everyone's like, yeah, totally get it. But then when rubber meets the road, it's not a one size fits all, and that's the most challenging part. So that's what we're working through right now.
At the end of the day, it's, I assume sales owes, I mean, it's called ABM. It's got the M in there, but it's all about sales, and it's all about sales enablement. So at the end of the day, that cash register has to ring, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's kind of like there's this guy, Mark Stauss. I don't know if you know him. Really smart guy. You should talk to him if you haven't yet.
From where?
He is the CEO of Proof Analytics.
Okay.
I actually think Sagram from Terminus. I mean, he actually says the same stuff, but he's just, in B2B, the value of marketing is helping sales sell more faster and more profitably than they could do by themselves. So if marketing can prove that over the next 5 years that we are, that's what I think that's where we're headed. We'll be able to prove that we're providing incremental value.
Well, the beautiful thing is that it's a win-win for everybody. It's not like the old days where you have marketing people at the event that they get a bunch of leads by handing out T-shirts or fancy widgets or whatever. But those aren't even target accounts. They were just people that like T-shirts and they like widgets or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
It's nice to be targeted. It makes me focused on the right account and the right measurement.
Yeah, it is. And, I equate it to, and this is a personal story. I have a 2-month-old child. And before I had a child, I could get involved in many different things during the workday. And oftentimes it would bleed into the night. And I just had the luxury of being able to be a little more laissez-faire with the amount of things that I was involved with. But now I'm like,
you used to have a life.
So like now I have a child. I literally have like 8 to 10 hours, give or take, it flexes. I need to focus on the very most impactful activities to be good at my job, or else I just won't be effective. That's the only time I have. So I equate it to being focused on your best fit accounts, because there's only a limited amount of capital, and if you need to drive impact, growth, and margin, that's among other things, that's one of the big rocks for me.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So it's a scarcity of resources and being smart about how you use them. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. All right, so this has been great, Nick. I've enjoyed speaking with you. Any other final thoughts or wisdom, or otherwise, I look forward to seeing you again and talking with you again.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I leave off with that's the key is it's ruthless clarity on what you're trying to achieve, and so if you can line up all the activities to really what the business is trying to achieve, that's where the marketing value comes in. And if anybody wants to talk to me about any of these topics, I'm on LinkedIn. Just look me up, Nick Robinson, SAP. I think I'm the only one at SAP that's Nick Robinson. And I'm on Twitter as @SocialRobinson.
Excellent. And I'll put those on the interview page. And if you've got any other links we can add, maybe some blogs or thoughts, happy to include those as well.
Great.
Beautiful. Nick, it's a pleasure. And keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
All right, we'll talk later.
Okay.
Cheers.